Hello, and thank you for checking out this video. Today we're going to be talking about value stream mapping. Now, value stream mapping is a lean tool, part of the Lean Six Sigma methodology, where you would capture your process, and it helps you capture a couple really useful elements as you're trying to look for opportunities for improvement. One thing that I really love about the Lean Six Sigma methodology is that you don't really need necessarily to have software. A lot of the work really can be done with pencil and paper, with markers, with templates if you have them, PowerPoint, Excel. It can be done in a lot of different ways. So today I'm going to show you how to accomplish this if you had, let's say, a whiteboard and so even a scratch piece of paper, right? You start off by writing these little castle walls, little ups and downs. Think of this also maybe as your heartbeat, the heartbeat of your process, right? So the starting point is where the customer, whoever's requesting your work, your services, kicks it off, right? This first little divot here, this first impact point, is going to be the first operator. So let's say this is operator number one. I'm going to just put number one for short, right? This operator number one is doing a particular thing. Similarly, when they move on and they've done their work, operator number two here, right? And then number three, etc., etc. And you do this as many times as necessary. So you draw your castle walls, and you start off by saying, well, who's the first person in this process? And you ask them, great, what are your steps? What are some of the things that you do in your process, right? And you might write those down here. What are the steps? Some of the sub things that you're doing as you're accomplishing this, right? Then you say, great, thank you for sharing the steps in your process. Can you tell me approximately how long that takes in terms of hands-on time? Now, this piece here, we're going to put process time. We're going to actually write a time in here, but I'm putting PT so that you know this means process time. So for process time, what I'm looking for is how much time does it actually take for you to accomplish these steps, these three steps in particular. And think of it on average, right? On average, how long does it take for you to accomplish the steps that are required in this process? Now, we know sometimes you get distracted, or we have other meetings, or things get in the way, or I have to wait for somebody to respond to something. That's okay. How much time, if I were only doing this, and this was the only thing that mattered, how much time does it take to do these three steps? Hands-on, doing whatever the work is. Second operator, same question. What is the process time for your steps? Here's your step, right? And there might be more. So the process times here, each operator in between each sort of pillar is going to have their own set of steps and their own process times. How long does it take to actually do the steps here? Now, in between the two of these is something called wait time. Now, wait time is the amount of time accumulated before the next person can start doing their work. So this might be, the next operator does things once a day. That means we're going to have an 8-hour or a 4-hour on average wait time in the middle. This could also mean that this particular person started doing the first two steps and then needed to wait for an approval or something else. Let's say 3 hours went by and then they finished the other step, right? That 3 hours of waiting in between would go into that wait time. It's the amount of time between when this person started and the next person can actually get done that isn't accounted for in terms of actually hands-on process time. So you do this and you go on and on and on and on and on until you get to the end of your process, and you'll add up all those process times and wait times. Now, another thing that I wanted to call out is cycle time. So if I were looking at the accumulation of steps, so the process time plus the wait time, these two together, that would be your cycle time, your CT. So the process time and the wait time, think of this as the accumulated time that is within a particular operator's sort of sphere of influence, right? That's your cycle time. If you were to add up all your process times and all your wait times all the way to the end, from between the point of which the customer requested all the way through to the end, that would be your lead time. Lead time. So you've got your cycle times, which is the accumulation of the process time and wait time for a particular operator. Your process time is how much hands-on time a person is doing at a particular step. And your wait time is the accumulated time between the steps. So after this person starts, but before the next person can actually starts doing their work. So let's take a look at an example, yeah? So let's say we're talking about onboarding. So if, let's say, the hiring manager has identified a candidate and they've selected them and they've said, hey, to the hiring staff, let's go ahead and select this particular candidate and get them ready for day one, right? So the first step might be somebody in, this might be in HR, right, to process the initial paperwork. So that might be, paperwork. There might be, sending to central. There might be a budgeting step. Budgeting, right? So if I said, if I had a room full of people and they were to say, HR is the first one that has hands-on in this, and here's some of the steps they do, I'd say, great. But how long does each of those things accumulated for this particular operator, how long does that take to do, actually hands-on time? Well, if we've got 10 minutes to do the paperwork and sending to central's another 2 minutes, and then budgeting, I mean, that could take, half an hour, but, hopefully we already have that. We'll call it about 60 minutes. We'll call it 1 hour, right? One hour to make it easy, to make the math easy. Let's say after that, we say, okay, so who's next in the process? HR says, oh, that needs to go to finance. Finance needs to review the budgeting that we did here, and finance will have the next step. Okay, so great. So let's talk to finance. Finance needs to, let's say they do a review. They need to update their trackers. And they need to send the funds or something. I'm making this up as I go along. Okay, so they need to do the review steps, they need to update the trackers, and they need to send the funds. I might say, okay, how long does this take? Finance folks, how long does this take to actually do? How much is your process time, hands-on time? Sometimes I'll hear a response like, oh, this takes me, I do this all day, so it's 8 hours. It takes 8 hours. That's not actually accurate, because the amount of accumulated time it takes on average for one of these files might be more like 30 minutes, right? Might be more like 2 hours. It's a little more likely that on average, for one instance of this process running through, on average, how long does that take to actually do? Another sort of pitfall here is they might say, well, it takes 3 weeks. And I'd say, why does it take 3 weeks of process time? They say, oh, because the review step we actually needed to send over here, and the send funds, we actually have to wait for a system refresh, and that goes overnight, so that doesn't always happen right away. So it takes 3 weeks. I'd say, no, that's not actually 3 weeks of process time. What you're telling me is your overall cycle time, right? The process time plus your wait time is a total of 3 weeks. How long does it take you to actually do just these steps? And they say, oh, just these steps by themselves. If I were head down on a keyboard and just entering just these things, it might take me, let's say, an hour and a half. So let me get back to my 1.5 hours. Awesome. Now, you did say it takes about 3 weeks, so that sort of tells me that the cycle time here is going to be about 3 weeks. 3 weeks. 3 weeks in hours is 120 hours, yeah? 40, 40, 40. 120 hours. What we're missing here is how much time between when HR finishes their paperwork, sends it to central, and then it gets over to finance. What's the wait time between here and there? Now, sometimes you'll have a ticketing tool or something that'll show you how much time between when this person finished and when the next person finished. If you don't have that, don't worry about it. You can, I say squishy data, you can ask them about how long on average, is it, wait time before you can actually get started. Sometimes you'll only have things like email timestamps, which actually can be really useful because you can see the timestamp from when this person sent it, and you can see the timestamp from when this person responded, right? So that actually gives you a good estimate of your average wait time in between. So let's say this person in finance does this and they only do it once a week, right? That might be 40 hours of wait time. 40 hours. It's 40 hours in a work week, yeah? So you can see how we're starting to tell a story of our process here. Let's say from finance it goes to, let's say we mentioned central for this one. Let's say finance then sends it to central. And central, let's see, they enter it into some other system, right? And then they just click approve. Let's say this is really quick. Central, these steps, it takes, 15 minutes. I'll put 0.25 hours. And you keep doing that. You keep having the conversation out all the way to the point at which the hiring manager, in this case the customer, receives whatever it was they were requesting of this process. So in this case, the hiring manager was asking for a particular candidate to be ready for day one. So this might also include some of the onboarding or IT steps. These actually can get really, really long. So if you're doing this on a paper, I recommend just a nice big huge sheet of butcher paper. If you're doing it on a digital whiteboard, just know that you're going to be building it out quite some ways. We've seen this get quite expansive. What's really great at the onset about this is you get the folks together and they start to see what are the different handoffs between the steps. They start to really see, okay, how does what I do fit in with what that person does? And it really becomes a useful conversation tool. But you can also start to highlight things that jump out at you. For example, this 120 hours of wait time, right? Is this because of systems? Is this because of batch processing? Are we waiting, until once a month or every 3 weeks or whatever the case is? It'll start to highlight different opportunities that you can start to look at when you're thinking about ways to continuously improve your process. In a future video, we hope to talk about waste walking, which is the next step that you could do with this tool. Essentially, what that is in a nutshell, to get you all excited, we would apply the 8 wastes and our definitions of value add, non-value add, and business value add to start looking at these individual steps and looking for opportunities for continuous improvement. So thanks for checking this out. Let us know if you found it helpful. We look forward to seeing you again.